In the gospel text of today, which is taken from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verses 13 to 17, Jesus is asked a very difficult and a loaded question. At the time of Jesus, Jerusalem and the surrounding area was occupied by the Romans. And the Romans had imposed what was known as the census or the census tax, which was to be paid by every adult male at that time. And people were opposed to the tax because they looked at Romans as foreigners and did not want to give their money to the foreigners. And so the people who are adversaries of Jesus, the religious leaders at that time, come to Jesus with this question which they know is a loaded question, and Mark says very clearly, they came to him to trap him in what he would say. And they ask him the question about this tax is whether it is lawful, whether it is legal, whether it is right to pay taxes to the emperor, to pay taxes to the Romans, or whether they should not pay them. No matter what answer Jesus gave, he would be in problem with one or other group. If he said, do not pay the tax, the Romans would possibly hear of it and would regard Jesus as someone who was stirring up trouble. If he said, you must pay the tax, then those who were his adversaries would regard him on the side of the Romans. So they thought that they had caught Jesus in this dilemma. Jesus does not answer them, but asks for a coin. And they give him a coin. And on the coin was the head of the emperor. The coin was a Roman denarius, on the head of which was the head of the emperor. And so Jesus says to them and asks them, whose head is this? And they said, it is Caesar's head. If it is Caesar's head, then give back to him what belongs to him. And Jesus adds, and to God what belongs to God. Even though he is not asked about one's obligation to God, he is only asked about the taxes, Jesus takes his adversary to a higher level by adding, and to God what belongs to God, which means that the human person can never be given to the state. The human person can never be given to the emperor. The human person is always belonging to God. In the book of Genesis, we read how human beings are created in the image and likeness of God. And St. Augustine says very beautifully, our hearts were made for you, Lord, and they will never find rest until they find their rest in you. So while we must be faithful to our obligations to the state, while we must respond to what the state and the country requires us to do, we can never give ourselves to the state or to political leaders because our lives belong primarily to God. How will you show that your life belongs to God? Through at least 3 actions today.